Good evening and welcome back to the Ghost Biker Garage. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We have a great guest tonight, and as you can see, I am not in the Ghost Biker Garage this week. I'm actually on location at the haunted and historic Scott County Jail here in Huntsville, Tennessee, actually by myself. So hopefully, maybe we can have something. You never know if something might happen while we're doing this. I know the spirits here love to interact and love technology and everything. So you never know. But again, thank you all so much. If you have any questions for myself or for my guest, if you would, whenever you type those questions, please make sure to put those in all capitals. That way I'll know that that you guys are asking a question, because, you know, we are streaming on 3 feeds right now. We're streaming on Facebook, on the Ghost Biker YouTube channel, and also on the Ghost Biker LinkedIn page. So that way, you know, if we get any rapid fire questions or comments, I'll be able to know that those are questions. So just want to say hello to a few people over here in the chat room. We've got Dr. Christy Sumner, Janet Alms, DT Jabrell. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And, you know, just a few little housekeeping things before we get started here. Like I said, I mentioned the historic Scott County Jail. We have been closed a few days due to inclement weather, but we're back open. And we actually just announced our event schedule for February. We're doing something very special for the month. We're calling it Fall in Love with History. And we've got some flashlight tours and some public ghost hunts scheduled. Those are on the historic Scott Co Jail website and historic Scott County Jail Facebook page. We've got the dates of all of those events, and we're doing something a little special for the flashlight tours. We're calling them the Crimes of Passion flashlight tours. So as you can see, we got this whole love theme going on for the month of February. And I know that a lot of folks have been wanting to do a ghost hunt with Ghost Biker and also with Soul Sisters Paranormal. And so now you've got the opportunity to do that. The dates that we have open on that are February 5th, and it's a 3-hour ghost hunt. And then also on February 26th. So we've got those dates open for ghost hunts, and then we've got dates open for the flashlight tours, and then some other really cool things during the month of February. So I'm going to go ahead and get to my guest, because this guy, I'm so excited about having him on, because he just has such a wide array of interests. You know, he's an author, a researcher, a filmmaker, and we've got a whole lot to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and read his bio right quick, and then bring him on. Mike Ricksecker is the author of the Amazon best-selling A Walk in the Shadows, A Complete Guide to Shadow People, 8 historic paranormal books, and his new book, The Alaska Mysterious Triangle. So hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about that here shortly. He has appeared on multiple television shows and programs as a paranormal historian, including Travel Channel's The Alaska Triangle, Discovery Plus' Fright Club, Animal Planet, the Haunted, Bio Channel's My Ghost Story, and RenTV's Mystery of Mankind. Mike also produces his own internet supernatural-based shows on the Haunted Road Media YouTube channel, and is the producer and director of the docu-series The Shadow Dimension, available on several streaming platforms. He's also a native of Cleveland, Ohio, and he is a U.S. Air Force veteran. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Mike on. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Miranda. Thanks for having me on tonight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. I know that
Absolutely.
you've been real busy, and you do so much. I'm amazed by. I mean, you have like 600 videos on your on your YouTube channel, and just like I said, and writing books and such. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about how you got started and all the things that you do?
Yeah, well, like a lot of people, I got started in all this because I had a personal experience when I was a child, and happened to be with a shadow person, which is what my book, A Walk in the Shadows, is all about. And with that particular incident, we'll get into the story real quick.
Okay.
I had woken up in my bed in the middle of the night. I was about 8 years old, and there was this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my bedroom. Of course, I had no idea, about shadow people or shadow entities or anything like that at the time. I just thought there was an intruder in my room and he was about to kill me, because that's what you think at that age. Fortunately, I'm still alive to tell the tale, which is great. But it did actually get physical with me. It approached my bed, leaned over. I'm staring up into this blank black face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. Trying to scream, nothing's coming out of my mouth because I'm just so frightened. And it did something very unusual. It grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arms across my body, and then it ran off down the hall. By that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off to my parents' bedroom, screaming about what had happened. And they tried to console me, told me that it had a bad dream, but I was awake for this whole thing. And so that was like the first major paranormal experience that I had. Had some others as I got a little bit older. My first little paranormal investigation was when I was about 15 years old. I had no idea that's what we were doing at the time, but in high school, we're at our friend's house, just kind of shooting the breeze, and the Lori was her name, told us that she thought her room was haunted, or her house was haunted, primarily in her bedroom. And this intrigued my friend David and I. We're asking her questions. She's telling us about the old, family cemetery in the backyard and different things that go on around the house. But the main thing was that in her bedroom, anytime she would tack something up on the wall, it would always fall down, whether it was, an hour, a day, a week, whatever later. She couldn't keep anything tacked up on this one wall. So we're going to go investigate. And David and I go up there. We're checking things out. She's telling us some more stories, and taking a look at the wall. And David, I didn't realize this at the time, but he was an extremely sensitive guy. And he put his hand flat to the wall, and all of a sudden he's turned this bright red and starts sweating profusely. And I'm looking at my friend like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Never seen anything like this before. And so he started going like wall to wall in the house to see if there are any other hot spots. And that was the moment that I knew that it's like, I've had some of these experiences before. What I just saw now is really fascinating. And I knew right then that this is something I was going to be involved with for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's fascinating. So were you able to find what caused the shadow figure in your room, or who that was connected with?
No, that particular house, I would never say it was a haunted house or anything like that. It was really a one-off incident
Okay.
that I had. The following house that we moved to, and that was when I was about 13. We moved from, it was a house in Massachusetts that significant shadow person incident happened. Then we moved to a house in Ohio. And with that one, it started day one, where I'm unpacking boxes, putting things away, and I was seeing this shadow figure standing in my doorway. And it was different than the other one, because this one was more translucent, where that first one was very solid. And this new one was very fast too. So it's like I turn and look, and he would take off down the hall. And this happened several times over the course of several days, where I'd be unpacking boxes, putting things away, and he'd be standing right there looking in. So I ended up asking my mom about it. And apparently she thought that maybe I was a little bit more mature, which I don't know how mature you are for a 13-year-old, but I was a little bit older. And she confided in me that she had also seen this thing too. But she was very, I don't know, like nonchalant about it. She wasn't very alarmed, which was, great for me in a couple ways. For one, just the affirmation that my mother had seen it too was wonderful. Okay, so I'm not crazy. And then the fact that she wasn't very alarmed about it caused me to not be very alarmed about it either. And this particular shadow entity, there wasn't anything alarming about it, because it was just standing there in the doorway. So I got playful with him, and I started calling him Tom, like Peeping Tom. So anytime I'd see him, I'd say, "Hi, Tom," and he'd take off down the hall. And so I just chalked that up to because he stopped coming around maybe about 3-4 months later. And so I chalked it up to something that was there. Maybe it was the previous tenant, or something to do with the land beforehand. Deemed that we were okay, and because maybe curious about the new family there, and he just ended up going about his business.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I actually really appreciate what you were saying about your mom acknowledging that, because I know I've talked to several different people who have had experiences like that as children, and either they weren't believed, or they were alarmed because they didn't have that person. My dad was the same
Yeah.
way, being a scientist. It was always one of those things. If I was scared, and I would get pretty scared and nervous as a kid, and so he would always tell me, if he said, you don't need to worry about this, that really put me at ease. So
Mhm.
that's really great to hear, and I would imagine that actually was something that probably encouraged you to maybe look into these sort of things further, maybe?
Well, yeah, it helped. So,
Mhm.
because of the fact that, okay, apparently I'm not crazy. Other
Mhm.
people are seeing these things. I didn't have, somebody saying that I was crazy or shouldn't be looking into this, or
Yeah.
because I've heard those same stories of, you know, of people not being believed, and they're happy to be able to tell their
Mhm.
stories now, because for so long it was very, very taboo. So, yeah, that was helpful. Now, that wasn't a smaller town when we moved to Ohio, so there wasn't a lot for me to try to dig up information. It's like I could check out Amityville Horror from the library, and that was
Mhm.
about all they had.
Right.
So I didn't really get deeper into my research until it was a few years later, mid 90s. World Wide Web suddenly became, very popular, and started connecting with other people on, different forums and chat rooms like Yahoo groups, if you remember that, and
Mhm.
finding different little websites people were putting up with information. So I started connecting with people and doing, kind of my first real initial research into this area.
What was your first initial research that you started studying? Was it shadow figures?
Um, It not so much shadow figures, although I saw people talking about that. I always had a, interest in time travel and dreams. Dreams was a big thing
Okay.
for me because of, I believe that I had had a dream of a past death, and so, what was interesting for me, and EVP was another one. When I saw The Sixth Sense, I was like, "Oh, okay." So, he's playing with the tape recorder, so that's when I started, first playing around with that. Um, but yeah, there was this, time my friend and I was, home on leave from the Air Force right after basic training and tech school, and I took like a couple of weeks there back at home before I went up to my first duty station in Alaska. And so, my friend and I are just, reconnecting. We went out, I think we saw a movie, and then we went out to eat, and we're sitting there at dinner. It's just a Burger King, and we're telling some different stories. And I told her the story of this dream that I had when I was, again, I was quite young, but um, in this dream, I was in a war. I was in some sort of battle. It was out in the jungle, and I'm, trying to shoot the enemy down in the trees. But then all of a sudden, one of the enemy's soldiers popped up right in front of me, point blank to my head. Fired a pistol, and boom, I was gone. But I saw all these strange colors, almost like a kaleidoscope, kind of morphing and melting and all this. And then all of a sudden, those colors disappeared. And I was back in the jungle, and nobody was there. It was like the war was over. So, I had died in this dream, and then, it's kind of like my spirit was still there in the jungle after the battle had ended. So after I got done telling the story, there's this guy at another table that came over, and he's like, um, I don't usually do this, but I heard your story about your dream, and I want to talk to you about it. And he gave me his card, and his number to give him a call, which I did. And I was only 18 at the time. And I'm like, okay, who is this creeper? So, so I didn't follow up on it, but I remained really, really curious about it. So, a lot of those, initial searches that I was doing, and coming across these different forums, it was a lot of different, dream research, past lives. Um, if you remember the movie, Dreamscape with Dennis Quaid back in the early 80s,
Yes.
that was, yeah. And so I had an interest in movies like that, and consciousness. I was really interested in, and although I wasn't using that term back then, um, I was interested in different levels of consciousness, because another, movie that kind of piqued my interest was Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour, and the way he was able to go back to another point in time just by willing his consciousness there. So those are things that I was really interested in, and kind of headed me down my initial research.
Got you. Got you. And so you've been researching for how long? Let's see.
I mean, we're talking, well, 30 years would have been that first little paranormal investigation when I was in the Air Force. I mean, we're talking, well, it still would have been, God, man, is it really? Yeah, my 30-year class reunion is this year, and I went right after high school. So, yeah, we're talking 25, 30 years. Yeah.
Wow. So being in the Air Force and that sort of thing, and researching, are there a lot of folks in the military that have an interest in paranormal research from what you
Um,
found?
yeah, there are. It's and it's interesting because I was on another podcast earlier today, and he was also a prior service member, and it's interesting when you're in the military because things happen, you witness events, or maybe it's, extraterrestrials or whatever it is, but people dance around the topic because if you kind of talk about it too much, you might find yourself at mental health. And so people don't really want to go down that route. Like when I was in Alaska, the secure facility that I was at for 2 of my 3 years up there, we saw a lot of shadow entities down there, and it was kind of common knowledge. We kind of whispered about it, talked about it a little bit. There was this theory going around, or this kind of urban legend, that the building had once been a hospital. We were in the morgue area, which turned out to be untrue. Doing the research for my Alaska Triangle book last year, I discovered that tale was not actually true, but we still saw the shadow entities down there. But still, it was one of those where it's kind of like whispers and things like that. When I had my first interview with my supervisor there, when I first met him, I'm kind of sitting in the chair across the table of him, and I saw the shadow pass his doorway, and he saw that I had noticed that, and he was just like, "Yeah, that happens down here." So kind of acknowledging it, but not really defining exactly what it was,
So he actually saw it too and had
Yeah,
encountered it.
yeah, everybody saw the stuff going on down there. So
Okay, well, that leads us to, let's talk a little bit about your book. I'm going to go ahead and pull up on the screen
sure.
here. Let me find it here. Okay. So yeah, so let's talk about your new book.
Yeah, it's a new one, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. Yeah, this was fun to write. I mean, I was featured on the Alaska Triangle television show, Travel Channel, and it was really, they were looking for somebody to talk about portals, vortices, that sort of thing. They'd come across one of my YouTube videos on that topic, and once we got to talking, and they started asking me questions about Alaska specifically, I was like, okay, so you're talking about the Alaska Triangle phenomenon. They're like, yeah, exactly. That's what the show is. And so it was just a perfect little fix. I'd been up there and witnessed some things, of course. So so it was just really natural to go ahead, since I'm a writer, to go ahead and write the book and talk about a number of things that we did talk about on the show, but other things as well, additional material that, of course, was not on the show.
Gotcha. And so did some of this research take place when you said when you were stationed there?
There are some stories there from when I was stationed in Alaska. So the story that I just told about the shadow entities, that was there. Some of the, just bizarre, there's bizarre natural phenomena that happens up there, and just the land is very volatile. So like when I stepped off the airplane for the first time, it was snowing, but mixed in with the snow was ash, because there had been a recent volcano eruption just across the Cook Inlet. Mount Spur had erupted just recently. So there's that. There's all kinds of earthquakes that happen up there. It's just very, very volatile area. But there's other strange things that happen there as well when it comes to like the magnetic force and the physical bizarreness. Like, for instance, it was April 1993, so it's I'd only been up there like 5-6 months, and this plane taking off from the Anchorage airport, I think it only been in the air a couple of minutes, but one of the engines fell right off the airplane, landed in a supermarket parking lot. And
Okay.
fortunately, nobody was hurt. It landed in the back side of the parking lot. Some shrapnel fell into the surrounding neighborhoods. People were reporting walking into their bedrooms and finding large pieces of metal in their beds. Again, nobody got hurt. So that's fascinating in and of
Yeah.
itself. But, the plane turned around and landed and it was fine. But can you just imagine that? An engine falling right out of the sky.
Wow. Yeah, and
Crazy.
we've got a question here that says, does Mike think that there are any differences or similarities between the Alaskan and Bermuda triangles, and if so, how?
Um, there there are a lot of similarities between the two, which is why we've been calling a lot of these other areas in the world triangle areas. So, in fact, the Alaska Triangle in some circles and for many years had been called Alaska's Bermuda Triangle because there are so many similar, like we talk about missing airplanes and ships that go missing or have all kinds of crazy um, equipment malfunctions and things like this that happen. But you have other areas of the world, like the Dragon Triangle there in Japan. You had the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, the Lake Michigan Triangle, where Northwest Flight years ago went missing. You have ships that have gone, people right off the ships have just disappeared. And so, yeah, you have a lot of these similarities between all these triangle areas because it's similar activity where you have that electromagnetic energy that creates the vortex energy that wells up from the Earth's core that spawns off all of this insane activity, opens up portals, and and what have you.
Got you. And so the best way for people, if they want to purchase this book, what's the best way for them to?
You can just go to Amazon. You can go to my website and click
Okay.
on it, MikeRicksecker.com, but it's going to take you to Amazon.
Okay.
So
All
Barnes
right.
and Noble and other outlets have it as well.
Okay. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that. Let's talk a little bit more about the shadow people, and also and how you mentioned something really interesting when you were describing what you had encountered. You sort of started talking about two different ones and kind of the characteristics. Have you done research as to the different types of shadow figures that people encounter?
Yeah, absolutely. So, A Walk in the Shadows, Complete Guide to Shadow People, has four main sections to the book. And the first section is all on different types of shadow entities. So, we're talking like your basic humanoid figure, hat wearing entities, the hooded figures, mist, wisps, the crawlers. So, all these different forms. And, there are a lot of stories in there, a lot of anecdotes. So, not just my own tales, but stories from other people as well and their personal experiences with the different types. The second part of the book is on sleep paralysis and how that's related to shadow phenomena. The third section is kind of like my favorite because it gets into, okay, what exactly are these different things? So it talks about shadow entities as human spirits, get into extraterrestrials, get into interdimensional beings, astral projections, light beings, all these different types of things. Answering questions because people ask me, are doppelgangers, shadow entities, the jinn, Wendigo, skinwalkers, all those different types of entities. Are they shadow people? So I kind of answered a lot of those type of questions. Though there's a lot of things that are actually still open for interpretation too, and I let the reader decide. And then the fourth section is on the darkness, and because there are a lot of people out there that believe that all shadow entities are evil, they're the darkest of the dark,
Mhm.
they're demonic and things like that. And it's like there are some that are, but most are rather benign. They're just watchers and just observing and that sort of thing. And some are
Sure.
actually rather benevolent. So that's the fourth section of the book, answering those questions.
And that's interesting because I've listened and seen several different people talk about it, and one in particular was talking. I mean, she was pretty convinced that most shadow figures were dark and evil. Although I know from what I've encountered and what I've talked to with some other folks, that didn't really seem to be the case. That was just sort of just their way of manifesting. And I kind of wondered, and I wanted to get your take on this. So, um, could a shadow figure really be, I guess, maybe a light person or something? Just because I guess I had someone explain this way, because I draw and I
Mhm.
do artwork, and so somebody actually wanted me to draw a. She had a vision, and she wanted me to draw this vision that she had when her dad had passed away, and she said that standing around the bed was some shadow figures. And so I heard this explained to me this way, and I thought it was really fascinating. She was saying that obviously, I mean, someone might think they were dark, but she was saying, no, our eyes can't comprehend. So that's what we see. And so to me, it kind of made me think, like, when you look at something that's bright and then look away and you can't, I'm trying to explain it in the way.
No, you've actually hit on both points that I make in my book. So, because I have a section on light beams,
Uh-huh.
and I bring up both of those points. So for one, with light beams, sometimes, because you hear those stories of sometimes, somebody's on their deathbed, they're passing away, and they'll be surrounded sometimes by shadows. Sometimes people do see the light beams around them, but just because they may be shadows around them doesn't mean that they're actually, dark or nefarious. With light beams, remember, our eyes can only see a certain spectrum of light. It's we do not see, all areas of the light spectrum. So there are things that our eyes cannot see, and so that light may be at a certain wavelength that those beings are emanating that we can't see, and all we're seeing is their inner core, the actual kind of physical type being, and we're not seeing the light that they're emanating. So that's one thing. And also, like you were saying, and I don't recommend this, and I do this in my presentations too. I do not recommend doing this. Stare at a light bulb for a long enough period of time, and what do you end up seeing? You just end up seeing the silhouette of the light bulb, and you're not
Yeah.
seeing the light anymore. Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that made perfect sense, because when she was describing this for me to draw, I thought that was fascinating when she said she saw dark shadows, and then as she was explaining how it was explained to her, to me that made perfect sense.
Mhm.
That may and two, with the color black, it's like, where you have all these colors that come into it, and it just makes this one color. I mean, that makes sense to me as well. So sometimes something that's dark isn't really what it appears to be. So
Exactly.
so I appreciate you explaining that. We got a couple questions here. Dr. Sumner says, do you think that there is more interest now, or is it just that people are more open to talking about their experiences?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll then kind of piggybacking on that, I'll also get the question, does it seem like, this phenomenon is happening more often now? And I mean, there is more of an interest now because, the television shows and the internet have really helped to perpetuate a lot of that interest, which is great. Years ago, again, like when I was a kid and I was having these things happen to me and I was seeing and witnessing these things, I was in a small town with a library that didn't have books on the subject. So where could I go? So, it's great that the internet came around, people could start talking about it, getting in these groups and having conversations, and television shows started coming out and showing people, even though, say what you want about some of the different television shows, but they help people to realize, hey, I'm not the only person having this experience. Here are all these other people having these experiences. So I think that over the years, people have become more comfortable talking about it. It's no longer taboo. We can open up and have a conversation now. And so, yeah, you're seeing more and more people come forth, not because there's so much more activity going on, but because, our society is more open to it now.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Vicky asked, do you think that shadow people can actually be people on a different plane?
Yeah, absolutely. You're, a lot of them are interdimensional beings. They're, coming over here from some other plane of existence. I've seen some of those, or what I believe are some of those. Some of them may even be, time slips, like we're getting a glimpse of another point in time. And yeah, sometimes it just happens for a split second. But yeah, absolutely, they can be on another plane or dimension.
As far as from your research and from talking to different people, is there one type of shadow phenomenon that's more common?
Kind of, you know, your basic, you know, humanoid figure, the one that, you know, people kind of wake up in the middle of the night. It's standing there in the corner, that sort of thing. Uh, that and you know maybe the ones that kind of just dart down the hall. They see out of the corner of their eyes, and it's just kind of like a real quick glimpse.
Gotcha.
And there's a reason for that. You know, our you know, out of the corner of our eyes, we see a little bit of a different light spectrum. We can see a little bit into the infrared out of the corner of our eyes, and um, so we might catch something out of the corner of our eye, and we turn and look at it, and it's not that it's not there anymore. It's just that you know the our our eyes looking straight forward or seeing a different spectrum than the corners. Mark Anthony does a great job of explaining this in my docu-series, The Shadow Dimension. So check that out on Tubi. He does a great job of explaining it. Well, I have 3 different people talking about it, but Mark's explanation is really good.
Great, and we'll put that link in there. You know, I've actually just I've seen a couple different shadow figures through my time investigating. One that really kind of fascinated me was down at Brushy Mountain State Prison, and there were 9 of us in the room, and we were out in the cafeteria. And I won't get into all the details of the story, but essentially we had a couple flashlights sitting on these columns. And so the majority of the room was dark, but we had several areas that had these flashlight beams. And so the beam, it was probably about maybe the flashlight was sitting about 3 feet up on the column because it was half brick, and then the rest was a concrete column. So it cast a pretty decent flare there onto the ground. And so there was 9 of us in the room, and all 9 of us saw this. And it's kind of weird to explain, but essentially a shadow figure walked in front of the flashlight beam and cast its own head and shoulders shadow onto the ground. And what was fascinating to me, now we saw this shadow, the head and shoulders, and we saw it just kind of stroll across the room for probably about 3 seconds. So it was pretty slow. But what was interesting was before the shadow manifested, I saw what looked like almost like a little cyclone from the ground. And the only other time I've heard anyone else describe it this way, because I couldn't really believe my eyes when I saw it, and then to see the shadow being cast from it. But a lady at the Lizzie Borden house described the same thing. She said that she saw this shadow figure and saw what looked kind of like a little tornado, or just sort of a swirling of particles in the flashlight before she saw the actual shadow figure. Have you ever had anyone describe anything like that?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, a number of these shadow entities start off as like a black smoke. Sometimes they don't end up manifesting into a full form like that. Sometimes they remain as like a smoky type of entity, or you know, almost like a mist, a vaporous form. But sometimes they do end up forming up into an actual shadow figure. Or probably the most fascinating incident for me with this was a black smoke that ended up morphing into the apparition of a little girl, which was absolutely fascinating. So it was that was confirmation for me that okay, some of these shadow entities are just, you know, are human spirits, you know, because we just had one form into a little girl. There were 5 of us that witnessed that, which was great.
Was it a
So
solid apparition?
yeah, it was pretty solid for the most part. And what's interesting is we all saw her a little bit differently. Like I saw her fully formed from the head all the way down to about her knees, and then she started to dissipate away. Where others saw her fully formed from her feet on upwards, she started dissipating, you know, around her head. But that kind of just adheres to that, you know, we all, you know, resonate on a little bit of a different level, and so we were, you know, and that's why sometimes you know, around a paranormal investigation, one person sees one thing, another person doesn't, you know, because we all have a different personal resonance.
Sure. I'm sure that's probably the same way with EVPs as well, why some of
Mhm.
us hear certain things, I guess.
Yeah.
We actually have a shadow figure here at the jail up on the second and the third floor. I know the former jailer who was here, he was actually chased off upper third level by a shadow figure. But the one that stays on the second level is the one that is really fascinating to me, because we've had several different people see this individual, and we had one team here that actually caught a really cool phenomena on their video. They heard a voice outside say help when all of their equipment started going off, and they opened the door. They took their camera with them, and as they went around the corner, they you see a quick shadow figure dart across, and then a picture gets pulled off the wall and thrown 4.5 feet
Oh, wow.
across the room. And what's interesting about it, when you slow the video footage down, you actually see a shadow arm come out from the side there. And the way the picture fell, because we tried probably for 20 minutes that night and then 20 minutes the next day to try to debunk it, and we never could get that picture to do anything but fall straight down. We even broke the picture frame trying to
Oh, wow.
recreate it. But and then also for an arm to kind of reach out and fling it, I mean, there's no way. So is that something that's kind of common, that these shadow figures can manipulate things? I mean, you said that one shadow figure actually
Yeah,
touched you.
they can get physical. You know, it just it kind of depends on the shadow. You know, it seems like each has their own, different unique abilities. Whether they can touch you physically or not. 'Cause some of them are just very, very translucent, and they don't really have much of a physical mass. The one that manipulated my arms was, it was a solid
Wow.
shadow entity. And then others, they're a vaporous form. But we had one. It was a crawler, and we were investigating in the basement of an old church. It was totally abandoned church. It had been long since kind of blown out, really, and it kind of slipped in through the window of the basement, and it's swirling around us. But you hear the thing bang against the railing. It kicked a soda bottle across the floor, so it was able to get physical before it
Hmm.
finally left. So yeah, some of them, you can manipulate objects in the environment.
Okay, and it looks like I've got another question here. I was just looking to make sure I didn't miss. Dee Dee is talking about astral projection, and said, I guess that's really not a question, but I kind of want to tag off of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
'cause I cover astral projections in the book, that some of these shadow entities could actually be astral projections. And so think of, and this is the example that I use, is that um, the example of a grandmother. She lives maybe 500 miles away from her daughter and her granddaughter.
Hmm.
It's a bit of a long drive for her, but she knows how to astral project.
Hmm.
So say at night or what have you, she decides to project into her daughter's home, wants to go and, she sees her daughter there, goes into the other room to see her granddaughter there. Uh, and so, how does the person in that house, or the people that are in that house, witness the energy of the grandmother when it's there? Do they actually get to see a glimpse of it? And maybe it's not fully formed, but maybe it's a little bit of a faint shadow, because that energy has crossed into that household. And
Hmm.
so again, we talked about personal resonance earlier. Everybody sees it a little differently. So some of these astral projections could actually be, or some of these shadow people could be, that we see, could be astral projections.
And to me, that's one of the more fascinating theories, just because, um, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me,
Yeah.
actually. Astral projection has been something that I've always been fascinated with, but I had never really thought of it the same. But that would also, I guess, kind of make sense why sometimes, the shadow figures, and sleep paralysis, because I guess maybe the body doesn't really know how to react, maybe when they're seeing that, maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and with sleep paralysis, and it's an interesting topic and issue. I've experienced real sleep paralysis, and I never saw any shadow entities when I experienced the sleep
Okay.
paralysis. And I had sleep paralysis a little bit of a different way, where most people kind of wake up in the middle of the night and they're still paralyzed, which is a natural biological phenomenon, because the body paralyzes you while you're asleep so you don't act out your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But with me, my body was so exhausted that it just decided to shut down while my brain was still awake. So very, very bizarre. But the medical community can't seem to acknowledge the shadow person phenomenon. What they end up saying is that, well, shadow people they're just a manifestation of sleep paralysis, in which your brain is still dreaming and hallucinating, even though your body is woken up and still paralyzed. You're hallucinating from your dream. And it's like, yeah, but we dream about all kinds of different things. We don't just dream about people. We might have trees and bushes in our dreams. We might have planes or cars, things like that. I've had dreams of being on stage with Motley Crue, and I've never woken up to 10,000 people in my room with the pyrotechnics going off and all that stuff, which would be absolutely awesome. But that's never happened. So it's not that. The question then becomes, okay, so why is it then that that we're waking up and we're seeing these things in our room? What is it that woke us up? And so here's my theory about what's going on. I believe sleep paralysis is truly a real biological phenomenon that happens to us, but shadow people are a real supernatural phenomenon that can happen at the same time, because plenty of people have sleep paralysis, never see shadow people, or see shadow people and don't have sleep paralysis. I mean, we see shadow people, investigating, haunted locations and things like that. And, we're not walking around suddenly have sleep paralysis and see a shadow person, that's just silly. So what I think is happening is, these couple of things are happening at the same time. And, people that have had small children, will find this very familiar, where child wakes up in the middle of the night, they come into the bedroom, they wake you up because they need a drink of water, need to go to the restroom, had a bad dream, whatever it is. And some of them, and my youngest son Cameron was notorious for this, don't tap you on the shoulder or kind of shake you to wake you up. Sometimes they just stand there and stare at you. And I remember when Cameron would do that, and all of a sudden he'd wake up, oh my God, Cameron, what are you doing there? And he'd tell me, whatever was going on, and we'd take care of it. But what is it that woke me up if he didn't touch me or shake me awake? Well, it was his presence that woke me up. I could feel his energy. We all have a toroidal field of energy that surrounds us. And so when his passed into mine, even though I was asleep, I could feel that presence near me, and that's what woke me up. Well, I believe that's what's happening with some of these shadow entities at night, is that they come into the room, we feel their energy, it wakes us up, and sometimes we still have that sleep paralysis going on, because that happens naturally, but all of a sudden we see this thing standing in our room, in the corner at the end of the bed or whatever, and all of a sudden our adrenaline starts rushing, because we get that, if there's an intruder here, there's somebody foreign to the room, and it becomes this downward spiral of, there's an intruder, adrenaline starts rushing, all that. Oh my gosh, I can't move because of sleep paralysis. And so so I think that's what a lot of what's going on here with this.
Well, I mean, you hear about that a lot sometimes when people experience something paranormal in, when they're ghost hunting, or when they're not expecting it, and they see something and they're unable to move. I mean, they're clearly awake, but it's almost like they're just frozen. So I kind of wondered if that could have been the same thing, just, you're coming out of a sleep. So I wondered if that was like the same kind of biological reaction, I guess.
Yeah. That's pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. Is that something too that shadow figures tend to do, that people find that more likely than not, they're just observing, I guess?
Yeah, for the most part, they're just watching and observing. That's where I have a problem with a lot of the people that think they're all, evil, nasty, and all that. Well, okay, you wake up and it's standing there in your room. What is it actually doing? It's okay, sure, it's invaded your space. It's creepy that it's standing there. It's darker then the lighting of the room, so that's creepy, but it's not actually doing a lot. It's standing there staring, watching, observing. There's nothing else going on. Yeah, I had the one get physical with me, but
Mhm.
the one in my bedroom doorway, it was just watching, observing, and take off. You get this a lot with the a lot of similarities between the ET phenomena and shadow people, where a lot of people will wake up in the middle of the night and they're seeing an ET, and
Mhm.
kind of the same thing. They're watching, observing, not doing a whole lot. Um, again, that's creepy. It's an invasion of your privacy and all that, but it doesn't mean it's evil.
Exactly, exactly. And that was, the question that, Dee Dee had is, "What are they watching for?"
What are they watching for? Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question. So I think a lot of what it is they're studying us. Now, of course, the question is, what exactly are they studying us for? And there are a variety of different, possibilities. And so I had last year, I did a hypnosis session. It had a past life regression, and then hypnosis that went along with it to kind of investigate further. Okay, what happened with this shadow person incident where it got physical with me? And what came out of that was really, really interesting. So some of the questions that were asked while it was watching and observing were, what is it that you're here for? What are you doing? And it was an entity from another space is the term that they use. And the question that was thrown back was, you mean another dimension? And he said, well, you might call it a dimension, but it's another space. And they are studying humanity. They are curious about other entities in our dimension. They're curious about humanity. They want to learn more about who we are. And in this particular incident, apparently it didn't realize that I could actually see it. It was trying to remain unknown. But when it realized that I could see it and it had frightened me, the
Mhm.
whole arm crossing thing apparently, because I got another, it was interesting because I got another vantage point of watching this scenario.
Mhm.
When it crossed my arms like that, it actually patted me uh, on the wrist,
Oh,
like, trying to reassure me before it took off. So it was really interesting to see that, because the perspective that I had was really from like the entity's viewpoint. So I got to see like my 8-year-old self uh, from that
wow.
viewpoint, which was really fascinating.
Wow, that is fascinating. And really almost, I don't know, comforting in and of itself too. I mean,
Yeah, it made me feel better about the whole incident for sure. And then, of
yeah.
course, again, I had like 100 more questions following that. Like,
And that
okay,
has
from
how it
another
always
space,
is.
yeah, yeah, exactly. From another space, what exactly is that? Why are you studying humanity? That's great that you're curious about who we are and you're just kind of studying. I mean, we would do the same thing. See, that's the thing, is that we would do the same thing if we discovered, alien life forms on another planet. What are we going to do? We're not just going to go, drop down there and say, hey, we're here. No, we're
Mhm.
going to watch and observe for a while first, because we're going to want to know more about those life forms, make sure that if we go introduce ourselves, we're putting ourselves in a safe situation, that they're not going to attack us immediately and things like that. So we're going to take our time and observe the creatures first before we go there. So anything that's coming from another dimension, another planet or whatever, they're going to be doing the same thing,
Mhm.
learning about us first before just dropping in.
So by doing that study that you did, do you believe that that first shadow figure that you encountered was originally a human or something else that was maybe never human?
Something else that wasn't ever human. I mean, maybe another type of life form. Is it definitely another intelligent type of life form?
Mhm.
But it wouldn't be a human, because that's what they were doing, or it was doing. Although they said we are doing this, so apparently there must have been others on Earth doing the same thing. Um, but yeah, some other life form from some other dimension studying us.
Very interesting.
Mhm.
Have a question here from D Hoot says, "What's the creepiest thing that you've encountered?"
Um, and that's a
That's a
tough
tough
question
one.
because it is. I mean, really the one that crossed my arms. I mean, that was really creepy. But because I don't. The comment also said I seem to have a calm demeanor. I don't get
Yeah,
when I'm on an investigation or whatever. I don't really get frightened of things because I'm there to research and learn. And very
exactly.
curious about what's going on. So when something happens and others are running, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Um, but the one that was pretty hair raising was when we filmed for The Haunted on Animal Planet. And this is over 10 years ago now. That's the one case that was actually deemed demonic by Carl Johnson, demonologist, good friend of mine. And we'd been out there several times to investigate this house. The girl Taliesin, she was an adult daughter of the house. She was seeing this red-eyed entity in her closet. It was terrorizing her, was terrorizing the cat. Others in the house had seen this thing. They had activity in that house for 20 years up to this point. Nobody ever talked about it until things kind of amped up with her. And so we were brought out to investigate and kind of trying to narrow down, okay, what exactly is going on here? Is this entity, is it the spirit of somebody that used to live in the house? Because the house had some dark history. The original homeowner's father had taken his life in her bedroom. There was another accidental asphyxiation in the house, another attempted suicide. So all this dark stuff in the house. So, okay, is it one of these people, or is it something associated with the land beforehand that may be trying to that was kind of pushing people to their limits and doing these different things? And it ended up really kind of turning out to be the latter. Well, the family, of course, wanted us to cleanse the house and push the thing out of there. So that was a big part of the filming for the television show, was to film the cleansing.
Mhm.
And so as we're going about doing this, we had the family wait outside while we started the process. But Taliesin came inside because she needed to use the restroom. And so when she came out, she started talking at something against the wall, which we couldn't see, but she's asking questions like, why are you here? Why do you keep terrorizing us? These types of things. So Carl decides to do a blessing over her. And so when he starts doing this blessing, all of a sudden she doubles over in pain, like she got punched in the gut, and she falls to the floor. And so we pick her up, got her up on the bed, and she was okay. She kind of came to. Going over my audio later, there's an EVP right when that happened that said die when she got.
Oh,
So you
wow.
hear die, and then when she got punched in the gut. Well, after we deemed that she was okay, all of a sudden the back door to that bedroom, was the master bedroom, started blowing open. We'd close it and it'd blow open again. And so we ended up having to deadbolt the thing because it kept blowing open. Carl ended up blessing the door. And then the tri-field meter that we had set up over by her closet where she kept seeing it, that starts going off. So we have all these things going on in the house. We finally pushed the thing outside, and as Carl's kind of doing his final cleansing, final blessing there in the backyard to push the thing off the property, the wind kicks up. The cats are circling us like crazy. It's just total bedlam back there until he finally finishes and everything calms down. The family over in the side yard, we go over to them and we're kind of talking about things that happened. And one of the comments that we made was, "Wow, that wind got really crazy. How it kicked up like that." And they're looking at us and ask, "What wind?" And it's not a big yard. They're just over in the little side yard. Maybe I don't know, 50, 60 feet from us, and we're in the backyard doing this thing, and the wind is going crazy back there. So that night was just absolutely off the charts.
I can understand that, especially when you start getting like atmospheric changes and different things that really, I mean, really makes it feel kind of, I guess, out of control, or like something
Mhm.
insane is happening. That I would imagine. Thank you pretty much, or thank you, D Hoot, for your question. And I agree. That's one of the things. She also says on here. calm is good. And
Mhm.
that's the thing that I like in hearing you speak, and then that you also see in your videos and stuff. You really keep that calm demeanor. So
Thank you.
I really like that. And she also says, "Thank you for sharing." We're getting kind of close to the end here, so I want to make sure, where you mentioned earlier, you were talking about research and the library and that sort of thing, and I think that's a good segue into. I'm gonna pull this up here on the screen to your classes and stuff that you
Yeah,
teach. I think that's. I was
there it
looking
is.
at
Connect
this.
Universe.
Yeah, I was looking at this earlier, and that's really cool that you have this to share your research and knowledge and teaching. Let's talk a little bit about this and tell folks where they could find this and a little bit more about what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. ConnectedUniversePortal.com. It's an online learning platform. We also have a community within there as well. So there's a couple of different sides to it. You can get a single online course, which I have one on shadow entities. I have one on ancient Egypt, which is like 10 and a half hours worth of footage. It's
Wow.
there's a lot, and there's a lot of footage from when I was out in Egypt last June. And there's more courses coming. So I have those two single courses up, but then you can get a monthly membership, which gets you to our weekly interactive class. So that's on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. All kinds of different topics. Last week we did the future of humanity. We've gotten into, of course, we'll get into shadow entities and things like that. We've done the Alaska Triangle, of course. We did a huge unit when I came back from Egypt on all different topics like the pyramids, temples, stargates and portals, Atlantis, all that wonderful stuff. So we hit a lot of different topics week to week. Like I said, it's an interactive class where people can ask questions, and I do a whole, it's like a slide presentation every week. But in addition to that, there's like monthly Q&A videos. There's a weekly Mike's Morning Mug where I've got my coffee and we're talking about different topics, all kinds of behind the scenes footage and sneak peek videos. I have an American Southwest series. There's more Egypt stuff back behind there, all kinds of articles, more that are going up there this week as well. So all kinds of stuff you get access to with the membership, and it's $9.99 per month.
Wow.
So you get all this information in videos and everything for not even $10.
Yeah, and that's that's really cool. And so I guess they can go back and so if they don't make it for the live, they can go back and watch it
Yep,
after.
absolutely.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, we've got y'all definitely go check this out. Check
Thank
his
you.
classes out, and gonna also let me pull up. I also want to pull up your site here. I think takes a minute doing the comments over here, and then also doing the sites here. So got your YouTube channel. Like I said, there are so many videos on here.
Yeah, the Haunted Road Media YouTube channel. Yeah, at one point I had over 700 videos on there. I had to pull some older ones down, but yeah, you can see like the whole Shadow People playlist, Helltown, Ohio, which is right down the road from me. Done a lot of exploring out there. Yeah, paranormal investigations. We've got all kinds of there's my Friday night ghost frights where I did a lot of. Oh, it was fun. I would take a topic and kind of run with it. So
I like
there's
that.
like supernatural entities. I could talk skinwalkers, Wendigo, talk black-eyed children, all kinds of stuff.
Those are all topics that people always ask about, and finding a good resource on that is sometimes hard to find. So definitely, I've been going through your videos here, and they're very well put together.
Thank you.
And I've enjoyed what I've watched so far, and I really like the fact. I know with my Ghost Biker videos, I try to keep them fairly short, and that's what I like about a lot of these as well. Is they're short but very informative and very well put together. I mean, not all of them are short, but
a lot of them. are like 8 to 10 minutes. The
Mhm.
ones that are more like informational videos, the exploration videos and the paranormal investigations, those are much longer videos. But the ones like Lizzie Borden and the Black Dahlia and stuff like that,
Mhm.
those are more like 8 to 10 minutes. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
my haunted rock star ghost stories.
I like that. We have very similar music taste. I really like
Awesome.
that. And I love when people go back and tell the behind the scenes stories and talk about hauntings and tragedies and all that. That's very cool. So definitely you guys need to go. Again, we've got the links there in the show notes, but you definitely need to spend some time. Go subscribe to Mike's Haunted Road Media channel and spend some time binging on those videos if you haven't already. And also his website here, you have a really nicely put together website, very informative. And I guess that's what probably the best way that they can find all things
Yeah.
Mike Ricksecker.
Yeah, MikeRicksecker.com. And this website is actually changing within the next couple of days. I've been
Ah,
spending the last month putting together a new site. But right now, yeah, it's of course the best place to go. And you can see the Ireland tour. We still have a few tickets available for that if people want to join us for Ireland.
Let's go see if that pulled up on the page there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about that before we came on the show here. I know with travel restrictions and all of that fun stuff that's gone on
Yeah,
over the
yeah.
past
So
year.
far, though, fingers crossed, we're still going. We had to delay it once from last year to this year, but everything is still a go right now. And
Okay.
then we also were doing another Egypt tour next February, and we were able to do Egypt just fine this past June. That was really easy to get into Egypt, and the next summer, 2023. Very preliminary stages of putting together an Alaska Triangle cruise.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah, so he's got his itinerary on here and also talks
Yeah,
about all the
we're doing
information.
a lot of great locations, a lot of castles. We're doing and we have 3 paranormal investigations lined up. So Lep Castle, which everybody knows Lep Castle, Charlton Castle, and then we have Spike Island Prison, which is like the Alcatraz of Ireland, all to ourselves for an entire night.
Oh, wow.
So.
And so if people want to book, do they book through your site, or is that through Mysterious Adventures
Through
Tours?
Mysterious Adventures Tours, but you can see
Okay.
there on the form, the join tour, you just click on that
Okay.
button and I think it's set up through a We Travel page and you sign up for it. It's only $100 deposit to
Wow.
get started. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, anywhere that I've missed as far as plugging any of your sites, that's got your books on there as well. It's got you have your weekly podcast. What is that, and when does that air?
Yeah, so Edge of the Rabbit Hole, it has its own YouTube channel, Edge of the Rabbit Hole YouTube channel. That's
Okay.
Tuesday nights, 8:30 p.m. And then, like we said, the Connecting Universe classes at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays.
Okay. All right, great. And so, like I said, anyone go ahead. They can check the show notes. If I've missed anything, I'll make sure I go and put that on there. But definitely go and check that. Heather Mahoney says that she just watched the documentary on Helltown. And so she said she wanted to check your video out as well. So,
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
and then also with Skinwalkers. So again, guys, thank you all so much for your questions and for joining us here in the chat room. And thank you, Mike, for taking the time to spend an hour with us and chat with us and share what you do. I know I could talk to you for another hour about so many topics. Like I said, I love the fact that you research so many different things. And I guess with anything, it kind of seems like once you start researching one thing, it kind of leads to another because so many things seem to be connected. So
that's why we call it the Connected Universe.
There you go.
But thank you so much for having me on, Miranda. I really had an enjoyable time talking with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I got to meet you in person when we were out in New
Yeah.
Mexico, but
Las
we were so
Cruces, yes.
busy. Yeah, I think I had 4 presentations that day, and I know you
Mhm.
had your presentations, well, in those 2 days. And so we didn't really get to spend time sitting and chatting. So
Yeah,
I'm glad we had this opportunity. So
absolutely.
but yeah, for everyone, thank you again for joining us in the chat room with your questions and such. Next week at 9 p.m. Eastern time, I have Chet Guthrie, the dream poet, and he's going to be on and talking about how he got started, and he's had some pretty interesting adventures as well. So so you guys are going to want to tune in for that. And like I said, go and check out the historic Scott County Jail and some of the different events that we have coming up for Fall in Love with History Month here during the month of February, and book a ghost hunt with myself and Dr. Sumner. So again, so until next week, I hope everyone has a blessed week and stays warm. Talk to you soon.